The next speaker is senior geophysicist Ruth Murdie. Ruth manages the Earth Imaging and Observation section of the State Geoscience branch, and this involves running the earthquake monitoring and seismic imaging projects, as well as building 3D visualizations of geological features of Western Australia.
Okay, today I'd like to show you how GSWA is enhancing the earthquake monitoring in Western Australia. Previously, all earthquake monitoring across Australia has been conducted by Geoscience Australia out of Canberra. However, now GSWA is working with GA, focusing on earthquake monitoring in WA in areas which have particular interest for the industries and peoples of our state. When WA was first settled, it was not thought to be a seismogenic area, despite Aboriginal legends that are interpreted as earthquakes and tsunamis. Earthquake monitoring started in 1901, and since then it's proven that WA is actually very seismically active. Generally, there's a low level of seismicity, with magnitudes 2 to 3 quite common in certain areas, but there have been 6 earthquakes of magnitude greater than 6 since recording began. That's much bigger than the one that happened in Melbourne the other week. And paleoseismic studies show that there are potential for magnitude 7 earthquakes in WA. Areas of particular interest include the southwest seismic zone, the eastern goldfields, and offshore Broome and the Canning Basin. Many people today still remember the Meckering earthquake in 1968, but nobody often recalls the one in 1979, only 10 years later, in Cadoo, of much the same size. More recently, we've had one in Lake Muir, and in 2019, there was the Big Broome earthquake, which has been the largest one recorded in WA. Now, that area is still seismically active, and we get magnitude 2 to 3s regularly coming from that area. This is an example of the earthquakes associated with the Lake Muir earthquake in 2018. It started in September with a magnitude 5.7. The 8th of November, followed by another large earthquake of magnitude 5.4. And a lot of people remember both of those, but what they don't remember is that there's actually another 700 earthquakes associated with those 2 events, which was recorded by a temporary network put down by GA. And that happened in the next 5 months. Now, this is a typical example of a main shock aftershock swarm, but not all events in WA have a main shock. A lot of them just rumble around in magnitudes 2s and 3s. And an example of that is in the Kurda region in the northern wheat belt. This is a swarm that's actually happening at the moment. This is the data from the GA catalogue. If you see the orange events, that's actually pre-year 2000 data. The locations aren't great. You can see they sit on a bit of a grid pattern. This was due to the algorithm and the velocity model used at the time. The data from year 2000 to 2020 is in the green spots, and you can see they're starting to form clusters. It looks like there may be a trend associated with these clusters. I'm going to treat those trends with a little bit of skepticism, because all the stations monitoring the events at that stage were to the east of the earthquakes. However, 2020, GSWA put another 3 stations in the area. You can see them there, the Kurda, Beacon and Wattening stations. And you can see in the blue spots, circled by the large red one, this is the cluster happening at Kurda at the minute. It's very tightly clustered. So I'm hoping that with the addition of some new stations, we're going to get a better handle of the earthquakes in this region. So, as I said, we've just put some new stations in. This was the situation prior to 2020. We added those 3 stations in Beacon, Kurda and Wattening. So they're really sort of nailing the northern wheat belt seismicity. We put another one in Ongerup to help look at the southern wheat belt seismicity, and we have seen swarms recorded on that station. And we put one in Canona Bell in the goldfields. We put one in the goldfields because I personally find it very interesting. I was there in 2010 when the magnitude 5 hit. I'm sure some other people remember this. And it destroyed a lot of buildings in the Kalgoorlie-Boulder region. It's still going on. There's been another 11 earthquakes already this year in that region. You can see by the pink spots. Anyway, the Canona Bell station was only in there for 6 months, unfortunately. But during that time, we recorded another 5 earthquakes. Those are the ones in the pink spots. And you'll see they lie a lot closer to town than the ones in the green spots. The green spots were recorded without the Canona Bell station. There is a permanent station at Cambalda to the south, which is quite close when you consider the next closest stations are Meekatharra and Warrakoona, which is on the NT South Australian border. So we can really see how having the stations close by the earthquakes is really helping put these in the correct place. And when you think of that, there's been 11 events this year. One in May, people in Kalgoorlie said, I really felt that earthquake hit me in the feet, implying it's coming right in the middle of town. And yet this location at the time was way off to the northwest. So we hope to re-establish stations in the area, another 4 or 5 stations in the goldfields, to try and look at the seismicity. Now, I'm not saying it's due to mining. It's a really interesting area. If we look to the south, we've got Norseman. Norseman regularly throw a swarm at us, putting magnitude 4s out on a regular basis. There's a little bit of mining there. We've got the Kalgoorlie region. The mines are in the yellow diamonds with the earthquakes in red spots. You can see both are happening in Kalgoorlie. But you've got areas where there's a lot of mining and no seismicity. So when we put these new stations in, hopefully we'll get a better handle on what's actually going on in that region. The Canning Basin is another area of interest for us. We've just put in another 10 stations, 6 of which are telemetering data to Geoscience Australia. It is a collaborative project. They're receiving this data real time, and actually just this week the data has gone live, so you can see it yourselves. And there's another 4 stations we put in. They will go on a satellite link and start telemetering data sometime next year. And we're very grateful linking up with CSIRO and GSWA in doing an automatic algorithm to look at it, earthquakes that are much smaller than GA would naturally port on. We can really get a handle on the stresses in this area and look at the big crustal structure. So if you see one of these around, it's one of my seismic stations. We've got a solar panel, we've got the aerial sending data to Canberra. Under the solar panel there's the box of tricks, the power and the digitizer, and then just behind our fieldy is the seismometer buried in the ground. So just in summary, GSWA is contributing to the earthquake monitoring in WA with specific WA focus. This should result in better earthquake locations. It's also about crustal and lithospheric imaging, which is a much bigger important for exploration. We're also looking at seismic hazards and strong ground motion for engineering applications, and also for earthquake preparedness.